Hi, welcome to our third episode. As promised, this time we'll explore the idea at the heart of deep canvassing. That's listening with empathy. To introduce that, we'll back up a bit and go deeper on our definition. We'll return to concepts that originated with people's action. Deep canvassing has three fundamental components. First is non-judgmental listening. We'll ask about voters' views and offer follow-up questions about their experiences, and we listen with open minds. Second is sharing stories. We invite narratives about relevant personal experiences. And third, we process conflicting beliefs in a way that can make room for a new viewpoint. Now, about those conflicting beliefs, if we're meeting people where they live, in their homes and in their heads, we're likely to encounter a range of beliefs. We often talk about voters as if there are only two camps, deeply opposed in their views. In reality, there's a lot of complexity in how voters think and feel about politics and social problems. These charts from the Pew Research Center show how voters group into distinct patterns of partisan ideology, running from solid liberals on the left to core conservatives on the right. And while there are clear tribes on the left and right, the majority of voters don't belong to either group at the far ends of the spectrum, but fall somewhere in the middle. That's true even for engaged voters, the ones who vote consistently. Although it may be possible to find common ground with your neighbors who are hardcore Trumpists, it's the people in the middle we can really connect with through deep canvassing conversations. They're our focus in this project. Here's the thing. We know that facts don't change feelings. Recent studies on how our political brains react to information tell us a lot about what works and what doesn't when we're trying to communicate across political differences. Research psychologists have found that when people are presented with factual information that fundamentally conflicts with their core political beliefs, they actually become more resistant to changing their minds. And we all have built-in biases and blind spots on both ends of the political spectrum. We tend to think in binary terms, all or nothing. We tend to look for things to confirm what we already believe. And as part of that bias, we tend to trust messengers who tell us what we want to hear. If we're not aware of these cognitive biases, we can be highly resistant to factual argument. After all, ideology is basically a way to make sense of the world and to define what's real and good and possible. Partisanship is an expression of ideology, and even people on the fringe ends of the ideological spectrum have an integrated worldview that feels valid and deeply logical to them, even if it's not consistent with provable facts. We need to keep this in mind when we think about who the people are we want to meet when we're deep canvassing and what we're expecting to accomplish by talking to them. So here's another chart, the spectrum of allies. Our goal is to grow the active allies slice of this pie. People only move one position at a time. They don't typically leap from one side to the other. Notice that there are no arrows on the far right at active opposition. We're going to leave the active opponents alone. That's not to say it's never worthwhile to engage in conversations with folks who are actively opposed to us. It's just that those are the hardest, most triggering conversations we're likely to have. And there's a lot of other work to be done before we focus there. Therefore, in choosing who to speak to, our best bet is neutral folks or passive allies. seeking to move them to become active allies. In 2025, though, we should recognize the evidence that some Trump true believers are beginning to question their allegiance. Maybe they've lost a job, or workers, or they feel betrayed that a conspiracy theory didn't work out as expected. There's even an organization to help MAGA refugees. Like all refugees subjected to harm, they deserve asylum. That's not our mission, but if we meet these folks, we should recognize that they're wrestling with conflicting beliefs. Our principles can guide us to listen with curiosity and compassion, looking for openings to move them toward a new way to make sense of their lives. So, if facts and arguments don't change people's feelings about an issue, what will? The key is listening with empathy. Deep canvassing is rooted in that principle and in other principles of nonviolent communication, where the central idea is that human actions arise from human needs, things like connection, meaning, autonomy, respect. When we listen for the needs behind people's stated positions, we're more likely to help them feel heard. And that can open the way to finding common ground and influencing behavior. And for all of us, changing our minds is often a lifelong process. So let's hold on to this idea. Empathy is the key to understanding the other person's needs. When we say empathetic listening, we mean being attentive and responsive to others' input during a conversation. Notice that this definition emphasizes that this is a practice, something that requires some attention and discipline, something we'll get better at with repeated experience. We are practicing empathy when we give our compassionate attention to another person, when we give physical cues of our listening while staying silent. We also might verbally guess at the feelings and needs behind what the other person is telling us. This is sometimes called active listening, saying back what you believe you hear. And then we need to listen to people's corrections if we guess wrong. Sometimes it's tempting to respond in ways that go beyond empathetic listening. Even with good intentions, some responses can signal dismissal or even condescension. That may happen when we give advice and start fixing. We are not presuming to solve people's problems for them, though sometimes we can offer information. We're also not practicing empathy when we try to analyze and diagnose. It's not our business to tell them what the real problem is from our supposedly superior knowledge. In the same vein, we don't want to one-up them with a better story. Oh yeah, I felt that and it was even worse for me. We also don't need to offer sympathy or pity, being sorry for a person or giving them easy reassurance. Oh, everything's going to be all right. Nor do we want to agree when we don't share their views in a kind of false commiseration. That raises an important point that I first heard from Dylan Marin. He's an actor, comedian, author who decided to engage directly with people who were nasty to him on social media. He started inviting people to join him for phone conversations rather than just making comments on Facebook. He'd listen, ask questions, try to understand, and look for common ground. He has a great TED Talk, an ongoing podcast, and there's his book, Conversations with People Who Hate Me. One of his central insights is that empathy is not endorsement. Treating someone you disagree with as a human being doesn't mean you're betraying your own values. At the same time, and Dylan Marin makes this point too, if a conversation feels really toxic, unsafe in some way, you have no obligation to stay in that discussion. We'll be talking a lot in this training about how to begin a conversation and help another person feel comfortable. But we'll also make sure you know how to end an encounter if you become uncomfortable, despite your outreach and your empathy. Remember that we're looking to move people from neutral positions or passive alliance toward active alliance. That's the best use of our time and energy. Most people who don't want to talk with you will simply say so. Encounters with angry folks who want to engage but resist both empathy and facts, those are rare, and those can end. And this is a good place to end this session. In the next segment, we'll look at how to incorporate empathetic listening into conversations with voters at their doors. I'll see you next time for episode 4.
You may be surprised, people in this world are getting organized. You're bound to lose, you fascists bound to lose.